The most expensive steak at your butcher counter often has less flavor than cuts that cost half the price. Beef is not just one product. It's a complex map of dozens of different muscles, each shaped by the physical life of the cow. The rule is simple: the more a muscle works, the tougher it becomes, but the more intense the flavor. The less it works, the more tender it is, but the milder the taste. Most of us pay a premium for tenderness and miss out on the animal's best flavor. Don't stand at that butcher counter guessing again. Ribeye. The ribeye comes from the rib section between the 6th and 12th ribs. This area does the least work in the cow's life. Muscles that do not work stay very tender. This cut is famous for heavy marbling, which is fat inside the muscle. Under the right light, these thin threads of white fat look like marble. When you cook the steak, this fat does not just melt away. It soaks into the meat, basting it from the inside to keep it juicy. Restaurants once called this the Delmonico steak to make it sound exclusive. Today, you can buy it with or without the bone. The bone-in version is called a cowboy ribeye. If the butcher leaves a very long bone, it becomes a tomahawk. The tomahawk is just a ribeye dressed up for a photo. The bone adds no extra flavor. You are paying for the theater. Filet Mignon. The name Filet Mignon literally means dainty filet in French. In France, the name actually refers to pork, while the beef cut is called tournedos. This cut comes from the tenderloin, a long, narrow muscle that runs along the cow's spine. Because this muscle sits inside the rib cage, it does almost no work during the animal's lifetime. This lack of movement makes the meat incredibly soft, creating the famous buttery texture that melts in your mouth. However, because this muscle never works, it has very little marbling and lacks the rich, beefy flavor found in more heavily worked cuts. The perception of luxury began in 1906, when author O. Henry used the term in a book as shorthand for high-end dining. By the 1960s, American steakhouses marketed it as the ultimate luxury item. Its high price is driven by its extreme scarcity, only about £1 per cow, not by superior taste. New York strip. The New York strip comes from the short loin, located just behind the rib section. Because it is cut from the longissimus muscle, it gets moderate exercise, resulting in a firm, meaty texture with fine, clean marbling. It also features a distinct fat cap along one side that provides a rich, concentrated flavor without being overly fatty. People call this the New York strip because the famous Delmonico's restaurant in Manhattan featured it in the 1800s. While it was popularized in New York, the cut actually originated in Kansas City. The name stuck because it became the standard for American steakhouses, favored for its consistent shape and ease of cooking. This cut is the gold standard for grilling. The fat cap should be rendered down under high direct heat to create a dark, salty crust. For the best result, cook it to medium rare to keep the muscle fibers juicy. T-bone and porterhouse. Why settle for one steak when you can have two? The T-bone and the porterhouse are the ultimate stage act of the meat world. Both cuts come from the short loin, the exact spot where the tenderloin meets the strip loin. They are separated by a distinct T-shaped bone that serves as a natural handle. When a butcher cuts straight through the spine, you get a piece of tenderloin on one side and a strip steak on the other. The difference between them is purely about size and government rules. A T-bone must have a tenderloin at least ½ an inch wide. If that tenderloin is wider than 1¼ inches, it becomes a porterhouse. During the frontier days, cowboys loved these for their size. Today, they are a sign of wealth because they combine two premium textures on one bone. Always cook these over high direct heat to sear the edges. Have I got you at the edge of your seat? Like and subscribe. We are only getting started. Chuck roast. The chuck roast is the undisputed king of flavor, yet it is often the most misunderstood cut. It comes from the shoulder of the cow. Because the animal uses its neck and shoulder muscles to move and graze all day, these muscles are dense with heavy connective tissue. This makes them extremely tough, but also provides a deep, beefy flavor that tender steaks simply cannot match. For decades, the food industry ignored this cut, labeling it as cheap or scrap meat, because it required too much work to prepare. Chefs eventually realized that by cooking it slowly, that tough connective tissue breaks down into gelatin. This process transforms a cheap piece of meat into a silky, rich meal. The secret here is time and moisture. You must cook this in a liquid like broth or wine at a low temperature for several hours. High heat will only make it leather tough. Brisket is the ultimate test of patience, a cut that demands respect before it will ever yield flavor. It comes from the cow's breast, positioned right between the front legs. Because this area supports nearly 60% of the animal's body weight, the muscle is packed with tough, dense fibers and a massive amount of connective tissue. It is perhaps the hardest working muscle on the entire frame. Historically, this cut was a staple for Jewish families and early settlers because it was affordable and fed a large group. It eventually became the holy grail of Texas barbecue culture. In the past, butchers struggled to sell it because people did not know how to handle its unique texture. You must cook this low and slow for 12 or more hours to melt the collagen. Always slice it against the grain to ensure it stays tender, creating the perfect melt-in-your-mouth experience. Flat iron. The flat iron is the scientific miracle of the beef world, a steak that didn't even exist 20 years ago. It comes from the shoulder, nestled deep inside the heavy chuck primal. It sits tucked away behind a thick layer of gristle. Butchers used to grind this entire muscle into hamburger meat, throwing away one of the most tender parts of the cow. In 2002, researchers at the University of Florida finally figured out how to extract this muscle by cutting around the tough connective tissue seam. This discovery allowed them to reclaim a premium steak from a section previously reserved for grinding. It is now celebrated for its intense, buttery flavor and remarkable tenderness. To prepare it, you must remove the silver skin before cooking. Sear it over a very high heat for a quick crust, then serve it medium rare to highlight its natural juicy profile. Hangar steak. Hidden deep inside the abdominal cavity, this elusive muscle was once the secret bounty of the trade. It hangs from the diaphragm of the cow, suspended between the last rib and the loin, rarely doing any heavy lifting. It is a single solitary muscle in each animal. Butchers traditionally tucked it away for themselves rather than putting it in the display case. That is exactly why it earned the nickname the butcher's steak. For decades, it remained an underground legend because there is so little of it per cow. It is packed with a mineral-rich, intense flavor that is deeper than almost any other cut on the animal. Prepare this carefully by removing the tough membrane that runs through the center. Sear it over extremely high heat to get a dark char, and make sure to slice it thinly against the grain for the best texture. You almost took that gulp of saliva, right? You might as well like and subscribe. We are only getting to the best part. Skirt steak. Fast, furious, and fiercely flavorful. This cut is the heartbeat of every great fajita recipe. It comes from the plate section, specifically the diaphragm muscle that helps the cow breathe. Because it is a thin, long strip filled with tough muscle fibers, it requires a specific approach to unlock its potential. For a long time, it was treated like a throwaway scrap, sold cheaply to anyone who knew how to handle its aggressive texture. Mexican-American kitchens changed the narrative by turning this chewy cut into a legendary staple. By marinating the meat, they softened the fibers, while the high-fat content gave it an incredible savory kick. Achieving the perfect result demands a scorching hot pan or a live charcoal fire. You must sear it for only a minute per side. Most importantly, slice it thin and across the grain to shorten the long, chewy fibers for a tender bite. Flank steak. Lean, long, and intensely beefy, this cut is the unsung hero of healthy, high-protein dining. It originates from the abdominal area of the cow, directly below the loin. This region provides structural support for the animal. The muscle fibers are exceptionally long and rope-like, making the meat naturally lean with almost no intramuscular fat. For years, it was largely ignored by mainstream steakhouses because of its toughness. Culinary professionals eventually realized that its lack of fat was a strength, not a weakness. By using acidic marinades like lime or soy sauce, the fibers break down, allowing the meat to soak up bold flavors. Treat this cut like a high-performance athlete. Keep the cooking time very short. Use high heat to build a quick, charred exterior. For the final step, always slice it into thin, diagonal strips against the grain to ensure every bite is soft and easy to chew. Picanha culotte. Crown jewel of the Brazilian steakhouse, this cut is a revelation for anyone tired of standard American beef. It comes from the top of the rump, resting right above the sirloin. This muscle is located near the hip. It receives moderate exercise, which builds a deep, complex flavor profile. The signature feature is its thick white cap of fat that sits perfectly on top of the lean, dark meat. For years, it was almost unknown outside of Brazil. When travelers finally experienced it, they were shocked by the sheer intensity of the flavor. Butchers traditionally cut it into thick steaks or kept it as a whole roast. Cook it with the fat cap intact to ensure it bastes the meat as it heats. Grill it over high, direct flames to crisp the fat, then slice it thinly to enjoy the perfect balance of savory richness and tenderness. Oxtail. Slow-cooked perfection starts here, transforming a bony, rough-looking piece into the most decadent, silky stew imaginable. Despite the name, this cut actually comes from the tail of the cow. The animal uses its tail constantly to flick away pests, and the meat is filled with dense muscle fibers and a massive amount of gelatin-rich cartilage. It is the ultimate exercise in turning something discarded into pure liquid gold. Historically, this was the peasant's prize, a low-cost item that required hours of patience. It was common in many global cultures because the bones provide a richness that simply cannot be replicated with leaner steaks. It is not about the meat itself, but the collagen that breaks down during a long, slow braise. Simmer it in a heavy pot with vegetables and broth for hours. The meat will eventually fall right off the bone, creating a thick, glossy, and deeply flavorful sauce. Understanding the animal is the secret to eating better for less. Stop paying for labels and start buying for biology. If you want to master more ingredients, subscribe to the channel and join our community.